that one of those was my passport. Oh my gosh. What a relief. And I
You
just
said
thought, oh,
one was your passport?
pardon?
You said one was yours?
Yeah, one of them was.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start. Sorry to interrupt your story, David. Were you done? It seemed like you were done.
We were done.
It wasn't that great of a story anyway.
Okay. Well, I thank you for coming to my first quarterly CFO training. I'm thrilled to have more than one person here with me. So I did ask everybody to join early at 6:30 because this is the first time, the first part of the meeting. I want to talk about what other topics you might be interested in, because there are people on this meeting like Cecil and soon to be Mary who are not going to have a building to rent. So this topic today might not be interesting to you. I got my notebook out and I want to know what else you guys are interested in. What are you interested in learning? I can throw some ideas out too. So. Death, silence. Everybody knows everything.
I don't know enough to even ask what I need to know.
Okay. So some basics. Barry, you were going to say something?
Basics on Shelby. That would probably be good.
Yeah.
I know a lot more than I used to, trying to, enter our information, but there are times like finding out who is on the Harold and Ever Home item, and some of those oddball things, who's getting envelopes, any of those
Okay.
kinds of things. Sometimes they're hard to maneuver in the system there.
Well, I can cross that one off your list pretty quick here, Mary, because January 1st they stopped doing envelopes. So nobody's on that list anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, running reports in Shelby is a bear anytime you're trying to run reports. The easiest one is actually the contributor statements. But if you're trying to figure out how to have recorder problems, like, I want the addresses for all my priests, good luck. I might have to bring Jill on to help us learn how to do that, unless Diane's knowledgeable of that, but I can't do it.
That's what I do. Mary, and I've done it with Harold and Every Home. I just say, Jill, can you run a report? Because it seems like I'm always missing one little parameter there. I can do the Shelby entry report just fine, but Harold and Every Home and some of the other ones, not so much. So.
Okay. I might suggest some basic report writing education might be in order for congregational reports. I can teach you how to do some basics with that. So that'd be more like a writing course. Writing congregational reports.
Yeah, and for our Herald in Every Home, we have some that want paper, some that want electronic. And if that's something that I can manage in Shelby, I'd like to know how.
Okay.
Can get these folks on paper, these folks on electronic, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Donald, have you heard any more? I reached out when they asked us to do that, the survey on electronic versus paper. And what I got back from the World Church was for right now, as far as the congregation paying, it's just the paper Harold in Every Home. That's the only option right now. Have you heard if there's anything different? Have they added the electronic option, or is that still just within, people that are paying for their own?
I haven't heard, but as is going to be a practice on any of these calls, if there's a question that I can't answer, I'm going to follow it up with an email. So I'll write that one down. Could you put it in my email inbox so it makes sure that it gets a proper answer? Thanks, Diane. How about building projects? Anybody gonna do a building project soon? No? Okay. Selling, buying? Okay, we'll keep it at that. And I'm also going to send out, when I send this out with these other questions, I'll also send a variety of other topics. And if one of them strikes your interest, please let me know.
Donald, I would guess that you working with all of us around the Mission Center, you would have some idea of, okay, here's some areas where we're not doing.
Oh, yeah,
as well
yeah,
as
I got
another
lots of
group.
ideas.
So,
I got lots of ideas. But I don't want to overwhelm you with them either.
yeah,
So I'll keep it to myself and just put them in writing, and you get back to me if they seem interesting.
One thing
By
I
the way,
know
Kevin,
I need to know how to do is to open a savings account, as we call it now, with World Church.
okay. AIP, okay, and
They're thinking
banking
about
is
it.
another thing. Banking is a whole topic on itself too. We'll try to cover that one soon because I know of a congregation that needs it desperately. So it's more complicated than you think. So, okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started then. Mary and Cecil, if you want to stay on, you're welcome to and learn all you can, but you don't have to because this won't pertain to your situations right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about a horror story about taxes, and this is why we are doing this topic right now. Have any of you ever been to the Tuality congregation? Okay, a couple people have. Well, a while back, 2 years ago, I think now, Tuality got a letter from the county that said you owe us $50,000 in back property taxes. Now, it all stemmed from the fact that Tuality was allowing a group to use their building that the state did not recognize as a nonprofit organization. In fact, they were a nonprofit organization, but that nonprofit organization had failed to register that chapter with the State Department. So the state didn't recognize them, and then they issued a bill. They issued a property tax bill to, actually, first before they did that, they sent an inquiry notice to Tuality asking about this group and if they were using the building, and if so, how much, and they got no reply. And that wasn't the fault of our CFO. That wasn't Dan Brown, the CFO. I think he still is, in fact, for a little while longer. And it wasn't Dan's fault because many, many years ago, the contact sheet with the county department was never updated. So it was 20 years old, and the person who was listed as a contact had moved 3 times and died. So that person was no longer able to be contacted by the county. And since nobody was able to contact them, the county said, okay, you're going to be liable for all of the property tax for the past 3 years then. And then they issued the bill and said, you need to pay this in the next month or the church is going to go up for auction. So, and they got it finally because they went and visited. I don't remember how they got that letter because it didn't go to that old contact. I think it went, oh, I remember, it went to the World Church because they looked up the ownership records of who actually owned the building. And so it ended up in fiscal services at the World Church. And they emailed at me and said, can you look into this? So this is the the kind of risk that we're talking about running when we talk about renting your buildings to groups that, even if they are legitimate, have to prove that they're legitimate. Oh, and I forgot the best part. The reason why the county found out about this tenant was because they were having a nonprofit information sharing fair. And that nonprofit was there, and it was being visited by the tax assessor or somebody who works in the tax assessor's office. And he was going from booth to booth, taking information to find out where they were housed so that he could go back and update records and issue all these tax notifications to these churches. So there are evil people out there who do check up on us. And it really depends on county to county how the office is operated. But the tremendous risk that we are putting out there by not renting to who we should or who we shouldn't be needs to be guarded jealously and carefully, because that nonprofit, without that nonprofit status that we have, if it somehow is revoked, then your churches won't be able to stay in business. They'll be bankrupted by property tax and by income tax. Now we're not applicable to sales tax. We have to pay sales tax anyway, but those are the two big taxes that we would have to pay if our nonprofit status is somehow revoked. So that's your horror story. And I want to know what you guys already know before we start. Who is it that you are, or that you know, that you're allowed to rent your facility to? Does anybody know? Want to venture a guess? I know Kevin knows, but he's quiet.
I just unmuted myself.
Okay.
Who are we allowed to, like, folk time or Boy Scouts or something like that?
Yeah, those would be two examples of people that you can rent to. You are allowed to use your building for anything church related, even if it's other churches, but we'll get to that in a second. Anything governmental and anything from other nonprofits. And you can charge for building use for other nonprofits and for other government and for other churches. But you cannot rent or lease to individuals or for-profit corporations. Where we get in trouble the most in our church is renting to individuals. Because, well, I'm guilty of it myself, because I didn't know these rules back when I was pastor at Council Bluffs. But we would rent to individuals all the time for birthday parties, for quinceañeras, for all
Weddings?
these things. Weddings, funny enough, are actually an exception to the rule because it's the sacrament of our church. So you can rent for weddings and receptions for that matter. Hey, Steve.
Good evening. I misread the time.
That's okay. Well, Steve, I'm going to be teaching to the choir here. You probably already know all this stuff, but you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. It's been a long time, Donald.
Yeah. We just we're talking about who you can rent to and who you shouldn't be renting to. And it gets pretty complicated when you're talking about renting to individuals insofar. I'll even give you another example. And once again, this can vary based on county assessor's office. But community gardens, how would you classify those? Is that an organization? Is it an individual? It's certainly not a governmental agency. So community gardens can be another very sticky situation when it comes to property tax. I'll give you one example of it being done right, and that is Samish Island. Because Samish Island, the community garden, is actually run by an incorporated body, a nonprofit body. And the food that Samish grows is not distributed to the individuals in that body necessarily. It's contributed to the local food bank and to anybody else who's in need. But if you open your property to a group of individuals who all have their individual plots, that can be interpreted, as it was in Roseburg, Oregon, as benefiting an individual and therefore not a church-related program. And the Roseburg congregation had to start paying property tax on that portion of their property, which the community garden was held. So they fixed it. Roseburg fixed that problem that by incorporating properly. So they got the property tax removed, but they still had to pay what the assessor determined was a personal, it was a business use tax, which was much less than the property tax, but it was sustainable as a congregation. But they had to work out that deal with the assessor from Douglas County. So that's how careful some of these tax assessors are when it comes to who you can rent to and who you can't rent to. So do those stories make you have any questions about how you've been operating or what you're doing?
I think it answer that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. I think the individual thing sort of strikes me a little bit. I'm somewhat surprised. I guess about the only time we'd rent to an individual would be a reception or a wedding. We don't rent them like the gym for an hour or something like that. Those are all groups and stuff like that. So this does surprise me.
Yeah. Well, like I said, weddings and receptions are actually exceptions to the rule at our church because they're considered sacraments. But yeah, I mean, you've had basketball groups at Portland before, haven't you?
We have two basketball groups there right now. One's been there for 30 or plus years. It used to be the men's doctor at Providence. And then another one is a AAU girls basketball. And now we're starting a young boys AAU basketball.
Now, those probably are okay because they're incorporated as, well, I don't know about the doctors one, but the youth soccer is likely an incorporated youth soccer league. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that one. But if the doctors ones are not, they're probably a group of guys who get together and just want to use the gym. That one might put you in danger. So just let you know where your risk is and how to manage it. I'm not telling you to shut down, Kevin. Just want you to be aware.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Donald, you're probably aware we've had a gardening project for a number of years. And I don't think they did it last year, but in the previous couple of years, it was basically a family who used that garden plot. And so I don't know if that's a concern or.
Well, I'll tell you what they decided in Roseburg was that even though they weren't even paying the church to use these plots, that they were free, the county still said that the fruit of the land was considered
Wow.
a violation of the tax law. So I know it seems ridiculous, but and it will depend greatly on your tax assessor and how they operate their office. But just like any job, these guys and these women and men are under tremendous pressure to increase their revenues, just like all tax collectors from the beginning of time have been. And they will find whatever sources they can in order to do that.
Donald, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Let's take that men's basketball for a minute. Sorry, I've got noise going on here in the house. Let's take that men's basketball group for a minute. If I was on their roster, which I was a church member, would that help?
Only if it was considered a church program, like if other people in the church were allowed to come also.
And he's always let me know. They're getting pretty aged. Like I said, for quite a while, used to be a doctor's group, and he's always invited me or others through me to be able to join in their thing.
Yeah, I'm a Welch. Welches can't dribble and move their feet at the same time. So that invitation would fall on deaf ears if it were up to me.
Kevin, do you charge them a fixed rent, a fixed rate, or do they just make an occasional donation? And Donald, does that make a difference?
I think by the letter of the law, it would not make a difference if there was money that exchanged hands at all. If they were using it for free, it would be considered probably a church event. But I haven't split hairs that finely, Steve, to know the answer to that exactly. Okay, Carol, does Cowlitz Valley rent to outside groups?
We have not been renting to anyone since COVID.
Okay.
Before that, there was a yoga group that was in there. But that was before I had anything to do with having to pay attention to what's going on in the church. So I don't really know the details, but at this time, there is no one.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna drop a couple of resources in the chat box for you. These are a couple of websites that you can use to do some research. The first one is Washington State Department of Revenue. That's a pretty good website for researching what kinds of things are considered religious activities and what aren't, and what you can do and how much. The second one is Oregon Department of Revenue. It's much less helpful. And to do the research in the Oregon, I think it'd be better actually to go to the laws themselves than it would be to count on the website. Now, all this being said, I want you to know that there are some exceptions to everything, as there always are. The state of Washington allows for a certain number of days for a religious facility to be used in order to fundraise. I'm gonna write that down because I gotta look at how many days that is. And I'll put that in the follow-up to this meeting.
I think it's 50.
I
50
think it's,
here.
is it 50 per year or 15? I thought it was 15.
And I was thinking it was 50 per year in
Okay.
Washington, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. But say, those days, they add up pretty quick, right? So say you have a weekly basketball group, that's 52 of the 50 days, right? So it's not hard to reach that many days. I believe in the state of Oregon, it's a percentage, like your percentage of your income cannot exceed X if you're to keep your nonprofit status. So you can can use your building for a small amount of your income in the state of Oregon. And I'm going to look that one up for you too.
Could you give us some examples, just so I'm sure I understand what this means, Donald?
It means that, say, for example, David, that Bend brings in $100 in income for the year. It's likely that only $5 of that can be from building rental from outside groups. It'll be like 5% or 10% of your income can be produced from your facility. I'm gonna do some research and look that up because that just popped into my brain and didn't occur to me when I was planning this session that there are exceptions to the rule.
Are you saying that renting the facility out is the same as fundraising?
In the eyes of the law, yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Well, no, let me take that back. You can do fundraising activities, internal fundraising activities, all you want
Okay.
with your building. But when sources are coming in from outside, they can only be used for 50 or 15 days after I do my research. And that's all that you can do from
And
outside sources.
these are not our nonprofits or others who we're fined
Correct.
to. These are other groups. like
Other groups.
for-profit or the men's group or whatever.
That's correct. Yeah, you can rent to Boy Scouts of America every day of the week if you want to, or another church every day of the week if you want to. But if you're going to be renting to a for-profit or to an individual, you're limited.
Donald, one of the, on the same line, that a few years ago, our congregation was looking into having a holiday bazaar type thing.
Yeah.
Where people in the community could come in and set up a table and sell their crafts or whatever. And what we ran into with that is that doesn't work unless it's one of those set aside days for fundraising. You know,
That's right.
if you didn't charge them to set up their table, if they were charging, they're making money without having to pay for a space to do it in. And
Yeah.
The law gets really crazy with it, but with
Yeah.
those exceptional days, that makes a difference even for something like that.
It does, yeah. Even if you're not charging a fee, even if you let them come in and use it for free, you're still letting them use your building, which is considered a for-profit venture. So. And back when I was pastor, I made some good money doing that for the church. Luckily, Potawatomi County, Iowa was clueless, because that would have been my fault. I think we would have owed a lot more than we made. So. Another example, just an example. And this one did come from Potawatomi County. Our church there had some old garages that there were 6 garages in an L shape on a separate lot from the church. And the church wasn't using them. So we were allowing people to store some things in those storage units. And the county came by and assessed us property tax on that lot because it wasn't being used for church activity. I think the tax bill was $4,000 and the income was $2,000 for those storage units. So we ended up scheduling them for demolition and telling people, I'm sorry, but you can't store your things here anymore. So it does come down to even stuff like that.
So Donald, question.
Yeah.
So this isn't even probably, so the Montessori school, as you know, leases from us in a long-term lease. And that's gone for many, many years and under different names. But yeah, it's been a Montessori school. Substantial income. That's not going to get goofy on us, is it?
No, not as long as they maintain their nonprofit status with Oregon. They're
Yeah.
going to be fine.
Okay.
But that's the number one reason why Tuolumne was such a mess. The story that I told you at first, their lease that they had written to these people that were the cause of their property damage, property tax issues, it did not have a clause in the lease saying that the renter would be liable for the taxes. So that brings me to my final piece, and that has to do with legal review. So I have 2 templates that I'll be sending you as follow-up to this training. One is a long-term lease template. Kevin, I think you're familiar with that one already, and Diane, I think you've probably seen it as well. Steve, this is new since you were MCFO. Legal decided that they got they're tired of reviewing leases every year because they just can't handle it. So they released a template, and as long as your needs are within the bounds of this template, we can go ahead and issue it and sign it without review. But Kevin, don't get happy. The Montessori lease is much more complicated than the template is. They tend to be more picky, the Montessori school, and ask for several additions and subtractions from our templates. So
there's a lot of so what makes me happy though, Donald, is that this last year we signed a 10-year lease with them.
Wow.
Yeah, so we don't have to be reviewing this for some time. We do. I'll give a little bit of a thing. We will look at it, I think, after 3 or 5 years since inflation started to go up. We will be looking at that, but not the lease itself. And so we're running a 10-year lease that was approved by World Church Legal. And we also had an Oregon State real estate attorney who backed us. Both of them backed us up on this. So.
Yeah, when you're talking about a real long-term lease or a lease that has to do with a great deal of money, I would actually encourage all of you to pay the extra $1,000 to hire a local real estate attorney. And that is for 2 reasons. One, the time that it takes to get something through the Office of General Counsel and back can be excruciating, depending on what's happening at the legal department. Well, actually, I have 3 reasons. It's just one. Second reason is that those lawyers that we have working for the World Church are only barred in Iowa and Missouri. And so they can only issue us advice based on the laws that they know. They can't issue us, anything with their own signatures on it because we're working outside of the law. If they can be sued if something goes wrong. And 3, the writing is on the wall that, and Steve Veazey, already mentioned this, and I don't know exactly what it means, but decentralization is a word that's being thrown out in our church quite often. And I believe that the legal department is probably going to be the first thing to be decentralized because of that very legal issue with Iowa and Missouri. I think we're going to be asked probably to find our own legal representation for stuff. I'm guessing at that, so please don't take my word. But I highly recommend local legal review for those reasons. And if that's the case, part of the biggest part of my job, I think, in January is going to be finding a good legal team that can work in both Oregon and Washington. So an inexpensive option at that. So also, I'm going to send you another template, which is for one-time events. Now, you don't have to have an agreement, a sales agreement for one-time events, but if it's something that you do a lot, I recommend doing it. It simplifies the practice. It can be a way that you collect a deposit and go over, the needs of your building and what you expect from them before they sign the contract, and you can collect deposits and stuff before you even book your building. The one-time use can be very helpful to you if you're a busy church, a busy facility. It can take some time to review them all. Hi, Chris. All right, Eric. Eric's here. Not Chris.
Yeah.
Wait, you got kicked out?
No, my computer was messing up, so I couldn't get in.
No problem. For anybody who's using their building, you also have to have basic insurance requirements. You have to have the people who are leasing from you need to have a $2 million basic liability coverage, which is pretty standard. And last but not least, you're supposed to exchange insurance certificates with them. It's very standard practice to do that. It's just like you had a car crash, but you didn't have it yet. You give them yours, and they give you yours. So they can put it on file in case something happens, and they have to let the insurance companies duke it out for you. So, okay, that was a big brain dump, you guys. I just dumped a lot of information on you. How does it feel? And more importantly, did you learn anything today?
Yeah, so you just made me a little bit more paranoid, but besides that, it kind of brings to mind, we recently worked with our local fire department to put a Knox box at our rear entrance, which is a box that is keyed by the local fire department, and inside that box, which is a steel cased box, is access cards and so on, so they can get into the building if no one is available and they have to respond to a fire. That way they don't have to break down the door or windows.
Yeah, I'm familiar with those.
It was only a few $100, and I think a good insurance policy, if you will, in case there is something that they have to come and get into the building for.
You bet, and they're worth their money. I got a call once at 2 a.m. from a police officer from my office, wondering why I was doing it in my office, and they'd used that box and gotten in because somebody had called in a burglary, and it stole and tried to steal all of our computers, but they actually caught him in the act. So
Yeah, but that's on our shopping list as well. We just had the fire alarm system refuse to communicate with the monitoring company, and so they triggered an alarm and the firemen got there. Fortunately, they found a door unlocked, so they were able to get in, or without the deadbolt fastened, they were able to get into the building to check things out. There wasn't an issue, but it results in a new deadbolt and also looking into one of those lock boxes.
All right, so that's everything I have for you guys, unless you have any more questions. Eric, just because you're late, I'm just explaining to you that this has been recorded. I'm gonna send a link out to watch it along with some documents that I mentioned for people if they, and actually that, you know, as long as I continue to get 2 or 3 people on here, that might be the way you want to watch it, because then you can watch it at double speed. But anyway, I saw a chat. Who said that? Where are these lease templates? That's going to come out, Carol, with the follow-up email that I send. Yep. Templates are going to come out with those. They probably will be coming from me directly and not from the GPNW communications network right now, until Brooke gets up and running a little bit better. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
When is good for doing this? We're going to do it every quarter. Does anybody have a favorite time?
Not Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay.
Monday night's a good night for me.
When Wednesdays are in direct opposition to faith and formation. So
I asked Ashley about that because Cecil, who was here at the first part and jumped off, he's a regular with faith and formation too.
me
So
too.
that's probably why he jumped off. You are too, Steve?
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
all right.
Well, I'm probably going to move the next one to a Monday night then, but won't be for another 3 months. And I'll send you out the ideas that you've thrown out and I've thrown out. So, okay. Because of my meetings never last longer than they're supposed to last, ever. Okay. You take that home and you let everybody know. If I say it's going to be an hour meeting, and it's not going to go over an hour.
Great.
But we still might want to watch the recording, because we like it when people talk a little bit faster, and then it's easier to just get through it really quickly.
That's right. Less stuttering on my part. Okay. I love you guys. You do great work.
All right, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.